Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Once again, it is I, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, Robert Meyer Burnett, with yet another episode of Robservations, the show about something. This is episode number 229, my God, and as always, Robservations is brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And as you all know, if you want to look good and feel great and you want men's grooming products, if you go to getluckytiger.com, you can buy any of their fabulous products and punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity and get 20% off your order. Isn't that exciting? Well, welcome to this another week. It's a Monday. By God, being an imagination connoisseur as you are, there's so much going on. There's so much great stuff. All kinds of just wondrous things happening all the time. I mean, who would have thought Downton Abbey would have taken the weekend? The weekend box office, at least domestically. I'll tell you who, me. I would have thought that. I've never seen an episode of Downton Abbey, but even I know who the Dowager Countess is. I mean, I love me some Maggie Smith. I get it. I've never seen an episode of the show, but I love the fact that people, respond to it. I knew it was going to be huge. I said it was going to be huge. And indeed, like I said yesterday, number one movie, over $30 million in the domestic coffers, burning up the UK charts as well. So congratulations to everybody involved, setting a record for Focus Features. Pretty cool, And don't forget, just because it doesn't have monsters or it wasn't set in space or anything like that, doesn't mean that Downton Abbey is not the kind of show that imagination connoisseurs should be into, because it absolutely is. It very much is. And I want to, a big hearty congratulations. I'd like to say congratulations to all of you Downton Abbey fans. Well done, people. Well done. Very exciting. Very exciting. So I gotta preface this by saying I am not somebody who the idea of a female Doctor Who didn't bother me. I thought it was pretty interesting. Miss Whittaker, great actress, big fan of hers. I had no problem if the Doctor is going to regenerate in different bodies. He's been an old dude, a young dude, then he was an old dude again. And why shouldn't the Doctor be a female? No problem with that. Actually makes sense. It's part of the whole thing. But in our this day and age, we're going through a very fast social evolutionary period. We've got all kinds of people who didn't have a voice, who are marginalized, getting a voice. All of that's good. You've heard me talk about that for a long time. I'm like, isn't it better when people who didn't have a voice, there's a fly in here that's buzzing me, people that didn't have a voice getting a voice. Always a good thing. It's never a bad thing. And in fact, as I said, it makes for better stories. The more, when I'm talking diversity, this fly is going to really bother me. When I'm talking diversity, I think it's not just the skin deep part. It's getting people's experiences. What was it like to be someone who is marginalized or be a minority of any kind in a society like, say, America, which was predominantly a Christian nation, a white Christian nation for the longest time? What's it like being a part of a marginalized part of that society that suddenly has a voice and is now visible and is now getting the rights that are due to, I think, everyone finally? I think that's a very, very good thing. And from a storytelling perspective, I want to hear those stories. I think it's always a good thing. It's always good for society in general. I really want to just kill this fly because he's keeping me off my game. But it's only ever a good thing. So I have no problem with any of that. I don't. However, well, first of all, I should read this article. So for the internet is being inundated with, at least today, I've seen a lot of people talking about this within our little space. And Um, Gandalf should be a kuya with a moko. Call for this is a Maori term. Maori, I don't speak Maori, so I'm getting the words wrong. Call for a wizard to be a female in Lord of the Rings. This was an article that was in New Zealand papers, New Zealand media, and it came out, and I'm just going to read this story. Of course, as everyone knows, finally Amazon, which paid $250 million for just the rights to make a Lord of the Rings television show. I mean, just the rights. And in all, they haven't even cast anyone. Well, they have, but $250 million, the most expensive rights deal ever in the history of entertainment for anything. So Amazon's making a Lord of the Rings series. And for those of you who do not know, their Lord of the Rings series is set in the Second Age. So have we seen the Second Age on film before? Yes. The opening of the Fellowship of the Ring with Galadriel narrating, which is explaining how the worlds of men and elves and everyone teamed up for the first time to fight the original battle against Sauron. And the One Ring was cut from his finger, lost for thousands of years. That was the end of the Second Age. So this Lord of the Rings television series is going to be all about the Second Age, and I would imagine that ultimately it's going to lead up to that climactic battle against Sauron, and we're going to see probably the formation of the Rings and of Power in general and all that. Pretty cool. I mean, while there was never really a book about the Second Age, Lord of the Rings was about the Third Age. So it's pretty neat that they're doing. I mean, yes, it's a prequel series, but it's going to draw heavily upon the appendices, the Silmarillion, a lot of what Christopher Tolkien put together from his father's work. But it's going to go back and it's going to be as canonical as possible and show great fealty to Tolkien's original work. Very exciting. I'm very excited about this. It also has enough play that we know kind of what happened, but as far as the prequel series go, it's going to be pretty interesting. And the Tolkien estate has to approve it. There's going to be a lot of, well, what they decided to do finally was, and not to my surprise, I'm sure the first phone call they eventually made was to Weta, like, yo, what's up? Can we get you guys involved? Why wouldn't you? It's bad. A producer utilizes the tools that he needs or she needs to go make what they need to make. The only way you could make a Lord of the Rings TV series after you spent $250 million on the rights is to go to New Zealand and to call Weta, whether it's Weta Workshop or Weta Digital. Why wouldn't you? And as a matter of fact, the Lord of the Rings movies, and to a lesser extent the Hobbit movies, but mostly the Lord of the Rings movies, are so beloved. Why wouldn't you, and since you're going to talk about the Second Age, why wouldn't you basically consider the Lord of the Rings movies canonical, even with, say, the exclusion of Tom Bombadil for you Tolkien purists? Anyway, so Robin Malcolm, an actress that I am not familiar with, New Zealand actress, actor Robin Malcolm has revealed her top picks for actresses to take on the role of a female Gandalf in Amazon's Lord of the Rings TV series. This is a big deal about 5 days ago. It's only now spilled out into the mainstream across the planet. Malcolm said, "It's time the perspective in the show was flipped and should be less male-focused than its film counterparts, in which Sir Ian McKellen played the wizard. Those old legends, those old mystical stories, they're so based within a patriarchal landscape," Malcolm told Stuff, that's the New Zealand outlet. "Why not look at the magic of a matrilineal world where the magical powerhouses are women?" Her top picks were Kiwi actresses Raina Owen, Once Were Warriors, or Rachel House, Hunt for the Wilder People. "You need actors who've got gravitas and a lot of real personal power and a bit brilliant. And they'll take this in the absolute way that it's meant. Witchy poo energy, which those two have got and I aspire to," Malcolm said. Internationally, she liked Desperate Housewives actress Alfre Woodard. By the way, who doesn't like Alfre Woodard? Now there's two flies. Or if you need a big rock star that somebody knows and everybody already thinks of in Ian McKellen terms, then of course you go to Dame Judy or Eileen Atkins or Maggie Smith. Dame Judy is known for films such as Shakespeare in Love, Chocolat, and Skyfall, and Smith for the likes of Downton Abbey. Theater actress Atkins also starred in films such as Gosford Park. We've got uteruses, and back in the day, there was a real sort of magic and sacredness and sort of brutality around that, Malcolm said. I reckon the idea of Gandalf being a Kuya covered in beautiful mocha and tattoos would be incredible. Malcolm wasn't concerned about Tolkien purists out there who would violently disagree, pointing out that Lord of the Rings was first and foremost a fantasy. We've had female Hamlets, she said. Why not? Were she in charge at Amazon, Malcolm added, I'd be opening that story out and going well with what would happen if we did this. After months of speculation, the tech giant has confirmed what's thought to be the world's most expensive TV series will be shot in New Zealand. Pre-production in Auckland is already underway, and film is expected to start in the coming months. Hey, you know what? Let me just say I don't know much about Robin Malcolm, and I don't know why Stuff was interviewing her. And yes, as a thought experiment, I understand what she was trying to do by throwing out the idea that Gandalf should be a girl. Now, cue the predictable outrage of just about every other YouTube pundit and genre film sites around the world. There has been a lot of talk of this kind of thing. Let's make James Bond a woman. Let's make James Bond a person of color. Hell, we already turned M into Judi Dench, which, by the way, worked out great. When M was introduced in GoldenEye and called Bond a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War, no one cheered more loudly than I did. I loved it. However, of course, they completely betrayed her and her character and the character of James Bond in Skyfall by killing her off because James Bond was incompetent. Didn't like that very much. So anyway, there's an idea that we're going to make Gandalf a woman. Here's the thing. Over the weekend, someone posted, I forget who actually posted this, someone posted a link to on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. And if you haven't gone or joined the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, allow me to invite you to do so because it's great. And everybody that posts there, all you guys and girls and gentle beings and whoever you are, however you identify, as with the live chat here, it's a great community of people. I really enjoy interacting on the Facebook page. I love what everyone posts. And somebody posted a version of Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a 1927 silent black and white film. Somebody has taken it upon themselves not only to colorize it, but to add sound to the film. And it's a new take on it. And people ask, like, what did you all think? What did I think personally? And, you know, here's, and I objected to this. I objected to the idea of a colorized version of Metropolis. Because here's the thing. And here's, first of all, I object to this idea, this impulse that we should take things that are old and update them to the modern era. I am much more interested in seeing people of today go back and look at things from the days of yore and try and understand why we went from there to where we're standing today. I think it's important. Also, I think Metropolis is a landmark film of the time that it was made. And here's like people are like, well, you know, what if Fritz Lang, you know, if he had color film and he had sound, Metropolis would look like this. And my objection to that is, no, it wouldn't. If Fritz Lang had sound and color, he would not have made Metropolis the way it was made back in 1927. So you're not getting a vision of what might have been. You're getting a vision that is a result of thinking of today. Like, let's go back and look at this thing from 100 years ago and add color and sound and all the stuff we have today. And I guess that makes it more palatable to modern audiences. So ultimately, that's a good thing if it gets more eyeballs on. I'm like, no. One of the interesting things, and I think one of the most important things about history, is that it is indeed history. And I get it. When we're alive, I mean, I think one of the great, I don't know, the thing that makes me most sad is that I'm not immortal. That I know that basically the human lifespan, let's just call it 8 decades. It's sort of unfortunate that's all we have. I would love to live 1,000 years, assuming I could be in relatively good health. And if I was a vampire, maybe, if I was like 42 years old and that's when I was turned, that would be like, you're still seasoned and you've got experience, but you're not too old that you can't still be like a baller when you walk into a club dressed in a nice Tom Ford suit. You know what I'm saying? You could still, like, you could pick up the ladies in their 20s if you're a 42-year-old vampire. So you're not that old. But history is important. And it's an odd impulse to me. Like, it would be like, what if ancient Rome had nuclear weapons? And of course, there's where how many alternative histories have been written in the sci-fi world. I like alternate histories. I do. I think they're fun. It's an interesting thought experiment. Man in the High Castle, very cool. The upcoming For All Mankind. Oh, hey, the Russians landed on the moon first. Okay. I mean, one of my favorite, if not my favorite video game of all time is the late 90s version of Activision's Battlezone. And the entire premise of that game is that the Cold War never ended, the space race never ended, and the Soviets and the Americans are battling it out on the planets of our solar system. It's still one of my favorite video games of all time. It was a first-person shooter / RPG, and I loved it. I was obsessed with that game when I was making Free Enterprise during the editorial of it. I probably should have spent more time editing Free Enterprise and less time playing the Battlezone, but what can I say? I was stressed. It helped me alleviate that stress. So history is great. However, when you're living through history right now, what you want and all you know is the world that you live in now. So you want to be free. You want to have equal rights. You want humanity to be in a place that is perfect. And I get that. I understand that. But there are physical realities of our existence. And the fact is, through most of human history, if you go back, let's say we're around 100,000 years, let's just say, a lot of prehistory before there was history. If mankind, and when I say mankind, I know I'm locked into those patriarchal terms, mankind, not humankind, or even that people kind, whatever, however you want to call it. Women bared children. Women had to be protected. Men had to be the hunter-gatherers. Now, this is not to say that women couldn't do that as well, but because of our biological differences, we had roles to play. Women bared children, men did not. We still don't. Maybe we will at some point, but currently we don't. So for most of human history, there were very clearly delineated, mostly by biology, roles that we needed to play as animals. And, if we didn't stay home and protect the mothers of the children, we wouldn't be here. Nowadays, I get it. Now everybody wants everything, and our biology, nobody wants to really admit we live in a world where none of it matters. Whatever. So the idea of a female Gandalf should be female. Here's the thing. Gandalf isn't female. Gandalf was written by J.R.R. Tolkien, and yes, of course, he was probably a stuffy old white professor at Oxford. A philologist, a man who loved languages, and basically the entire Lord of the Rings story could be looked upon as an allegory for the encroaching industrialization of the countryside that Tolkien loved so much. And he saw what was going on. I mean, really, it's a parable for the dangers of the modern age. You could also look at it now if you want to go even further and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have cut down all those trees. You know, the Ents are angry. We don't need Isengard to be clear cut, do we? Is that a good thing to do? Probably not. But anyway, so this idea that, oh, okay, Gandalf's like some old white dude. Well, Gandalf's really not really a dude at all. He's one of the Astari, but I'm not going to go get into all the Tolkien lore. I can save Stephen Colbert will do that for you. I don't know my Tolkien that much. I was only steeped in it for about 3 years. But anyway, the idea that Gandalf should just be gender swapped, I don't mind the idea, but if Gandalf is indeed going to appear in the Lord of the Rings TV series, and heck, perhaps he can. He certainly could. You know, you could do that. I would suspect if they do make a Lord of the Rings series that does include Gandalf into the Second Age, you could recast Ian McKellen, or you could cast Ian McKellen. You know, I bet he wouldn't say no. But this idea that you can just gender swap a character or race swap a character or swap their sexual preference or whatever it is that you want to do, I think does a disservice to the very idea. Like, do I think that we need more female characters that are front and center in our genre entertainment? Yes. Do I think that we could have more gay characters that are front and center in our genre entertainment? Sure. People of color? Absolutely. More international. If you're going to make something in America, shouldn't we have more of a melting pot attitude toward the people that we cast? Yes, because that reflects the planet that we live on. And again, as far as I'm concerned, there's more stories to tell. But I don't think it does anyone any good. I don't think it serves anyone's cause if you take a character like Gandalf and gender swap that character, because that character isn't Gandalf. Now, you can make Hamlet a woman. Sure, why not? You know, you could do that. I don't have a problem with that. And as I said, Doctor Who can be a woman. But if you're going to take and make a Lord of the Rings movie, Dr. Kynes in apparently in Denis Villeneuve's Dune has been gender swapped. I don't have a problem with that. You know, that doesn't really bother me. But Gandalf is a cornerstone key character in the Lord of the Rings mythology. And there are other female characters such as Arwen, Galadriel, etc., that are female characters. I mean, imagine if someone said, we're going to do a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot, and we're going to make Buffy a dude. Intrinsically, Buffy should, in fact, has to be a woman, or the point of that character is sort of negated. I don't think I would want to watch a Buffy the Vampire Slayer show if Buffy was a guy. As a matter of fact, what made that show unique were all of the characters in it. And the same thing with Buffy. Now, I get it. You know, why should Gandalf be an old white guy? Well, because the creator of the character conceived the character to be that way. And if the estate of that character, the estate that oversees the author's interests, that wants to make sure that the author's interests are protected, that's how J.R.R. Tolkien conceived Gandalf. And this idea, what I find sort of really pernicious, is that somehow J.R.R. Tolkien, that of course lived through the horrors of World War I, lost friends in World War I, saw the consequences of World War I. A lot of what Tolkien was doing was born out of the time in which he lived. And this idea that it's suddenly okay to go back and change what he had done willy-nilly, to me is ultimately something that I find to be, I guess I want to say it's deeply troubling. First of all, it's disrespectful to the original author. And when you're trying to make a Lord of the Rings show, I also think it's disrespectful to the idea that you want to have strong female characters front and center. I don't think it does anyone a service at all if you simply gender swap a character, because what you're doing is it ultimately is sort of tokenism. What you really want to do is we want to see more female-centric female creators creating female-centric characters. We want to see, because at the end of the day, we want more voices. You know, we don't want voices to come along and change what's already been done. I don't think that's really helpful necessarily. I mean, you can gender swap anything. It's a trick. It's an easy way to go in and make that kind of thing work. And it'll always lead to mirth and fun. I am the master of fun and wonder. And let me tell you, gender swap anything, and immediately you've got something to look at and go, hey, look at that. Ha ha ha. I get it. But what you're doing is you're just relying on that trick, that gimmick. I think it's much more important that creators concentrate on creating new characters. If you have someone who's gay and they want to create a character that is gay, let's bring something about the gay experience to that character so general readers will learn. There's a reason that character becomes unique, whether it's a man, a woman, whether the character is not necessarily gay, but trans. What's that like? What is a trans character? If you have a trans detective, how does being a trans person inform their ability to detect? I think that would be interesting. Now, if you're an Astari and you're a timeless or endless or immortal or whatever you are, person like Gandalf, to gender swap that character immediately, you're asking yourself, well, okay, why are you doing that? Why are you give me a reason? And what does a female Gandalf do for the character that a male Gandalf cannot do? Because again, if you just want to switch the gender and make that person, that wizard, female, well, that's fine. But what does the femaleness of that character bring to that character? That's what I'm interested in. That's why I thought Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the reason people loved Buffy was that Buffy Summers was a woman. And she was written as a woman. And yes, of course, Joss Whedon wrote her and all of that. But the fact that she was a woman was what made that character. Her relationships with people, her relationships with her friends. I don't think Buffy the Vampire Slayer would have worked if Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a dude. I don't think it would have worked at all. What made that character interesting was the female experience of being a vampire slayer. And this idea that this character, this actress, Robin Malcolm, she doesn't just want the character gender swapped. She talks about, that character needs a uterus, and we want that witchy poo power. Well, that's not Gandalf. You know, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but create a new character. There's so many great fantasy characters that are female, and indeed, Lord of the Rings. I love Galadriel. Rather than perhaps talk about gender swapping Gandalf, why not put Galadriel front and center? I love Galadriel. Who doesn't love Cate Blanchett? I mean, come on, bring her back. But all of this talk about, I mean, I know a lot of people get angry about it, and they talk about it in our imagination connoisseur space as that it's threatening, you know, like guys are screaming and yelling. I don't find it threatening. What I do find is that it leads to bad storytelling. If there's a real good reason to do it, like I've watched a lot of, or I've read a lot of comic stories where, there's the female Thor, for instance. There's a lot of interesting stories about that. Captain Marvel being a man or a woman. Captain Marvel was a black woman in the 80s. I have no problem with any of those things, because especially if they can add they can add race and tell interesting stories from that perspective, that can only ever be a good thing. But the character of Gandalf is how he was written. And it's just like the character of James Bond. It doesn't bother me that they gave a black female agent the moniker or the license to kill of 007 after Bond retired. What's wrong with that? I have nothing wrong with that. That's cool. There's great storytelling there, because what's interesting is if Lashana Lynch is indeed the new 007, she's going to bring a whole different vibe to a person that actually has a 00. We've never seen a female, much less a black woman, having 00 status before. So that's cool. What's that like? What does that mean? What does that mean for the character? If you're going to show me something, and I think we're going to see something interesting. What's Lashana Lynch's 00 background? Where is she, a naval commander like Bond was? Or where does she come from? Did she come from an aristocratic family? Did she come from the streets? Where did she come from? I don't know. It's interesting. I want to see why. But to take an established character like Gandalf and to just do a gender swap on that character, I think it does a disservice to both the character itself, the long history of the character, and the audience expectation of that character, because suddenly you've now given yourself an obstacle that you have to surmount. You now have to explain, why was this character gender swapped? What does the gender swapping of this character, how does that add to the story? There's got to be something. Now that Gandalf is a woman, is Gandalf going to be a mother? And I know people are going to be like, do all women have to be mothers? No, they don't. But women are the only people that can be mothers. So, and like as Rob and Malcolm pointed out, having a uterus, being able to give life. If you're a magical character like a wizard and you have the ability to give life, what does that mean for your offspring? I would want to incorporate that into the story. But then again, then it becomes a story that isn't the story that Tolkien told, or it doesn't come from the realm of Tolkien's imagination. And what you're doing is you're then supplanting Tolkien himself and his world and his words and his imagination with the modern era and how you want it to be today. And I think that's kind of dangerous. I think that's also wrong-headed. I think that wanting to create the female Gandalf should be the beginning of new creative endeavors where new characters are created. J.K. Rowling, when she wrote Harry Potter, she didn't write Hermione Granger and the Philosopher's Stone. She wrote Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. She didn't. Isn't it interesting that J.K. Rowling wrote a male character, and he of course had Hermione as his friend? But should Harry Potter be Harriet Potter? No, Harry Potter's Harry Potter. And when J.K. Rowling sold the film rights, she made sure that her characters were protected. And there's a reason for that. They're her characters. And I think that, especially when you've got literary characters, gender swapping is fine. It's an exercise. But at the end of the day, I think it's more important that any new voices that come forward that are going to become our storytellers moving forward in the 21st century and beyond, let's hear their stories. Let's hear from these new creators. Let's not go back and change the stories of the past. Let's not go back and take those classic tales that have inspired people for decades, if not centuries, or hopefully soon millennia, and change them. Sure, it's always an interesting thought experiment, and that's fun. I'm not saying it can't be done. But Gandalf is Gandalf. Let Gandalf be Gandalf. That's all. That's all I was thinking. Gandalf's got to be Gandalf. But it's just funny. That was because we have because this is, I just want to talk about it because I was like, wow, the outrage culture and all that. I'm not angry, and I'm not going to talk about it being like, my God, it's yet another, but Gandalf being the old white cis male Astari that he is, it's time he should be taken down a peg. Why? Anyway, let's see. Wow, there's lots of Jordy54 says thoughts on Shia LaBeouf in talks for Moon Knight. I don't know if Shia LaBeouf is in talks for Moon Knight. I haven't heard that officially. Shia LaBeouf is not the person that I saw as Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, and Moon Knight. Not the person I would have seen. That doesn't mean he can't play the role. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Michael Keaton could have been a good Batman, but I enjoyed the way they approached that character. So if Shia LaBeouf is going to be Moon Knight, all right, I'm still excited. I want to see how they do it. Jordy54 also says, following Krypton, are you pro-film tax credits? I'm always pro-film tax credits. For those of you who don't know what film tax credits are, tax credits are an incentive that make movies are, of course, very, very expensive to make. And what tax credits are, there are certain regions in the world, certainly states in America, used to be Louisiana, then it was Georgia, where in order to attract business, because here's what people don't understand. When a movie gets made in a state or wherever it gets made, a lot of income is injected into the local economy. Now, how is that done? Aside from the obvious of renting goods and services, whether it's locations, whether it's you're going to get a sound stage somewhere or you're going to rent somewhere else, you're renting hotels for your crew. Local businesses benefit from an influx of people who are spending money locally. So if a Marvel movie, say $150 million Marvel movie, is going to roll into your town, there's a lot of money that's going to be spent there. They're going to also hire local people. A lot of people are going to make money. A lot of the byproducts, local businesses are going to make a lot of money. So it's very lucrative for a local economy when a film crew comes into town to make a movie there. Now, what tax credits are is, say you go into a state and you're going to spend $100 million. Now, depending on a state might say, we're willing to give you a 30% tax credit or tax rebate, or however however it's structured. And they'll say like, okay, we're willing, they might have a fund or something where they're going to give back. If you spend $100 million in a local economy, that local economy or the state or whatever will give you 30% in some kind of credit. They might give you 30% money. You spend $100 million, they'll give you back 30 million, which means that, oh, you've got an extra 30 million. So you've defrayed your costs. You can put that 30 million in to the film itself. You can do whatever. Or maybe they'll take, that's in a nutshell. I won't over explain it, but that's basically what it is. Sort of. There's a lot more to it than that, but basically they'll pay you or they'll give you credit for spending that money because remember, if you didn't come to their local economy, that $100 million is not going to be spent. So for them, giving you back 30% or 25% is pretty great because you're still spending 70 million. If it's a 30% credit, you're still spending 70 million in the local economy, which is a huge, it's great for the local economy. So that's what people do. But there's reasons for it. They have to have funds that can pay this back. The money has to be accounted for that they can actually pay you back. So there's a lot of politicking that goes on to make that possible. But what it does is it makes it attractive for populations, local populations, to have film crews come in and spend a lot of money there. And if you're like Georgia, for instance, and you have Marvel there, and you know they're going to be making TV shows and movies there for the next 10 years, that's a lot of cheddar that's going to be pumped into the local economy that you wouldn't have otherwise. So that's what tax credits are. in a nutshell. And I am a huge fan, especially as a low budget indie filmmaker. If I've got $4 million to make a movie and I'm going to go spend $4 million in a local economy and I can get a 30% tax credit back or something, that's pretty good. And that allows me to hire more people. It allows me to make the movie better. It's a good thing. Stubble McShave says, in a recent interview, Stellan Skarsgård said he was in makeup for 7 hours in Dune to play Baron Harkonnen and would be extremely fat in this Dune as well. Thoughts? I think that's great. Baron Harkonnen should be the flying fat man, as we heard in David Lynch's Dune. I think it's great. I think Stellan Skarsgård is going to look amazing as Baron Harkonnen. I mean, we've seen nothing. We've seen some behind-the-scenes stuff. We've seen nothing from Dune. They're keeping that stuff close to the vest. I mean, are the ornithopters in Dune, are they actually going to flap? Are the wings going to... I mean, are they going to do that? I want to know. I can't wait. I want to see. I am so excited about this movie. If Stellan Skarsgård is going to be in makeup for 7 hours, that means Harkonnen's going to be formidable indeed. I don't know if he's going to have the festering wounds on his face that he did in Lynch's movie, but I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I can't wait, dude. I'm so excited. Manny Santos says, yo, Lord of the Rings 2 will be filmed in my city. Fancy tingled. Well, Manny, I hope, Lord of the Rings will probably be filmed in every city in New Zealand, both on the North and the South Island. I mean, heck, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown. I'm telling you, Queenstown. It's going to be everywhere. And you know what? Everybody, why? I understand Ireland. They were thinking about Ireland, go back to Dubrovnik, but Middle Earth is New Zealand. I mean, let's face it. I think cooler heads at Amazon are like, we could start from scratch, but why should we? somebody really led the way already, and why not do that? Orville Nation says, love your content, Robert. Thank you for addressing real issues so intelligently. Well, Orville Nation, I want to thank you for that. I don't know, I'd rather talk about, in terms of when you say real issues, I'm like, damn it, I should be talking about climate change and I should be talking about Ukrainian interference into Biden's candidacy. I mean, those are real issues. But my wheelhouse, my wheelhouse is genre entertainment. I've spent more time thinking about Star Trek in my life than I have about local politics or national or international politics. So I should just stay in my lane. I think all of those things intersect, but I appreciate what you're saying. And I know what you mean. And, what's interesting is that I like all this stuff. I mean, I like talking about these things. I'm going to tell you yesterday. So Mahler, a lot of people, I think Mahler's Australian. If he's not, Mahler has a YouTube channel where he does these analyses he did great analyses of Force Awakens and Last Jedi that are much longer than the movies themselves. And he's very loquacious. But I watched his Force Awakens, basically his introduction to his Force Awakens analysis yesterday. I just like it. It always keeps me on my toes. That kind of deep dive. And it made me realize that there's people that there's essayists on YouTube, and that's what they do. They do their essays about movies and television, and they do deep dives into things. I mean, as I've talked about, I always talk about the Ideas of Ice and Fire channel, and I like going into those. And the interesting thing about the Ideas of Ice and Fire channel is that it's less commentary and more informational, which is interesting because I learned from that, and those deep dives are great. Mahler's channel, what I really liked about this, I'm going off on a totally different, but what I loved about Mahler's introduction to his Force Awakens, I guess, review, is that he talks about the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. And that's one of my favorite things, because I don't believe that all storytelling is subjective. I believe there is objectively good storytelling, because there are rules to follow in storytelling. Now, have these rules been laid down and set in stone? No, they haven't. But I do believe that good storytelling, there's objectively good storytelling. And I think whether you want to admit it or not, I think most intelligent people can recognize the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. And Mahler is really into in his reviews. And Mahler, it's like Darth Mauler, Mauler. He's all about the fact that your feelings are not facts. I love getting into all that, and I love talking about that. That's something I've been thinking about for a long time. The question now is, can you watch a channel like this and not feel, oh, I lost my thing. Can you not feel that you're personally being attacked? The funny thing is I didn't really know that Mahler, sorry, I'm getting back. I didn't know that Mahler, oops, see, I have this really long password. Sorry. Happy Polylaw, Jesus, Alex DeLarge would say. I love the ideas and opinions. I mean, opinions are not objective truth, and there's a difference there. And Mahler's really into that, and I really like Mahler. Anyway, I won't talk about that. Stub McShave says the wizards didn't arrive in Middle Earth until the Third Age, which means no Gandalf in the Second Age. Hence, no Gandalf in the series, male or female. Well, see, Stubble, I didn't necessarily know that. I was not up on whether or not Gandalf, there were no wizards in the Second Age, which makes sense because we didn't really see wizards against Sauron at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. So that's good to know. That is good to know. Dan V900 says Wally West had his race change in the New 52 and then was written as a racist black stereotype where he suddenly came from a broken home with a drug addict mom and neglectful dad. That was wrong. Yeah, I think that's wrong. I mean, you know, it's very funny. I took a lift today. I have a friend, a black friend of mine, Dr. Tom Parham, who former naval officer who actually got his doctorate. He got a PhD. He wrote his thesis on communication in Star Trek. And to give him a plug, his thesis is being published. I don't know if he updated it, but what's really interesting is I have friends of color, and I don't know any of my friends of color, specifically black friends, that are from parents of drug addicts or neglectful fathers. And I do think that whole idea is certainly there are probably a lot of African Americans who grew up with drug addicted moms and neglectful dads. But you know what? I'm sure that's pretty much true of just about anybody, anywhere. There's a certain percentage of people. What you're talking about is poverty, not necessarily racial considerations. And I know just as many people who didn't come from families with drug-addicted mothers and neglectful fathers, and I didn't realize that. I was not steeped in the New 52, but yes, I think that's not right, and that is stereotypical. And I do dare say that is in fact racist. I didn't know that about poor Wally West. Who knows? Cinema Survey Movie Review says never put your universe or gender before your characters. Yes, Cinema Survey, thank you for saying that. That is, in fact, true. It goes against the Burnett axiom. Never put your universe before your characters or your story. And 100% thank you for pointing that out. All right, I got letters. I got so many letters from people. I have a new letter. Well, a new letter, indeed a new letter, but from a new letter writer, which we haven't heard from before. This comes from Chris Provoto. And Chris writes, Dear RMB, greetings from the San Diego area. This letter might be a little everywhere. I'll explain why. I come from humble upbringings in Federal Way, Washington. Oh, I know Federal Way well, being from Seattle myself. Joining humanity a few months prior to Star Wars' original release date. I grew up enjoying Saturday morning cartoons on Como and Cairo. Those are our local stations. Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, famously yelling around my house with a helmet on, screaming, I'm Captain F. Rogers on accident. Some of my most memorable life experiences came at the SeaTac Mall, when I felt the shattering truths of I Am Your Father. By the way, yes, the SeaTac Mall and South Center, good theaters there. Seeing Spock sacrifice himself for the crew and being witness to Optimus Prime lay down his life. Two of those corrected themselves later, Spock and Prime coming back later, but Luke's experience grew deeper into the story. When I was 10, on a yellow box of Cheerios was a promo picture of this gray, oddly shaped vessel in space, which deepened and excited my love for the sci-fi arts, a new Star Trek, and the Enterprise. Nonetheless, I combed through every Seattle Times and PI, that would be the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, on Sunday for any further information about this upcoming beauty and majestic ship I could find. To exemplify my love for Star Trek and these shows, I joined the Navy in '96 out of Kent, retiring last year. I've been stationed on 6 ships, all flat tops or carriers. Specific moments, I've compared each type of ship to different Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, or Star Trek ships to moments from film. My imagination ran wild for years and always will. From the Next Generation, I learned the officers' ranks that I proudly expressed during boot camp. Though later in life, retiring as a chief, I've become annoyed at the lack of enlisted personnel in the show, even with the attempts at retconning O'Brien. This never sat well for me, but I live with it. Growing up, my life was devoted to not every sci-fi show, but a few in particular. Had a few friends with the same genre appeal. We even had a bonfire night of burning old girlfriend letters. Remember, no cell phones or online messaging. At my house, after we'd read each letter saying our goodbyes to previous days, we tossed our letters into the fire and conjured up our own superheroes with stories and power that powered the night, but was a moment that can never be relived. Myself, I daydreamed of my beloved shows. I found peace in several ways, from character strengths as a type of role model, and most of my reading of books was Star Wars, and life was simple. Until I started seeing a lady that fueled a new passion in life, and I forever had Japan fever. I hear you there. Earlier this week, I flew to Washington to prep a house I own to sell. Having to repaint a few rooms, long story, but it badly needed it. Flew out of San Diego to SeaTac, that's Seattle Tacoma International Airport, and worked from 1400 to 200 on the rooms, 0-200, along with a few minor touch-ups needed. During the night, a few of your past episodes joined up with Midnight's Edge on Star Trek and kept me well entertained. The focus was Star Trek and the several, let's just say, areas of possible improvement. And it sparked my desire to write to you. About Star Wars, I know more talented YouTubers have expressed different outlooks with more elegant words than I could. But like so many others, I lost it on The Last Jedi. Several books and comics have been writing a colorful universe that fans were expected to put down and push out of our minds and move on. My mind couldn't accept the narrative that Luke would turn his back on the universe and try and kill his nephew. Mahler, it didn't work for Mahler either. Luke was the only one to see the light, and he was the second baddest MF in the universe who was responsible for killing Luke was okay, and convinced him to turn on his boss that is the baddest MF in the universe. Luke would not take the final blow against his unarmed, mostly unknown, and on a personal level, his father. But the fans were told to believe that Luke would try and strike his nephew down over one vision. I know it was a little convoluted and confusing the way you wrote it, but I get it. Why would Luke try and strike Kylo Ren down? Given the faith from Disney into the story and the storyteller, I believe that the brand lost. I hope the brand can be rescued, but it'll take a great many years. About Star Trek. As a family, we watched The Next Generation. Once Deep Space Nine came out, my friends and I watched these episodes while having discussions afterwards on the events that unfolded every 26 weeks. Star Trek was grounded in wonderful science, real dilemmas, Q and Garrick and the Doctor's journey. I'm sure great pains of sacrifice should be awarded to Jerry Ryan's tailoring division, poor ladies or men. It wasn't perfect entertainment, but it accepted their own flaws while delivering stories people could share at work or home. My last job in the Navy was following along my ship from port to port as part of the logistics, loading, and unloading team from San Diego to Bahrain, and back to San Diego, Bahrain. During the nights after work, I relived Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and finally got to see Enterprise. I've wanted to make a YouTube channel just on the Discovery word of show from Deep Space Nine, as the show drops several words we've all become better people for by learning. During this time, I did try Discovery. I wasn't exactly hyped for the visual representation of what the previews offered, but I was willing to try. When I got to episode 3, I turned my back from Discovery, completely heartbroken at what was done. As a father myself, I could encourage my children to enjoy Star Trek as a discussion point of modern life with a thrill ride of sci-fi magic. It was, as Gene has always believed in humanity, the best of our own species possibilities. But when the two characters blurted the F word twice, I was done. And having to hear Klingon while reading subtitles was painful. From there on, through the effort was to try something new, they seemed to have drawn a line in the sand, put their excrement on our side while kicking the sand up and mooning the audience in pride for what they accomplished. Needless to say, I left Singapore angry, and it wasn't even for work. I was disappointed, ashamed to be a Trekkie, and knew I wouldn't want my children to see what had become new entertainment. So please take into consideration the collective voices of our cries that changed the IP so radically. It might as well be called something else. So many of these IPs that are deeply protected by fans are for the notion that these IPs are being tinkered with, and they were the things that what gave fans something to latch onto. We might not have been physically gifted in sports, we weren't pageantry beautiful for spectators, or charismatic in our charms, but we found joy, self-worth, and collective peace when we found someone else that held these IPs in such high regard. They were sacred temples in our lives, and seeing the newer versions feeling like they tarnished what drew us together in conversation and online communication in the first place. Yes, change is a great part of life, and pain gives way to a better form of humanity. But at specific points in the last 10 years, these changes have felt more for the mainstream audience to simply generate more in revenue on a pie chart over the fans that kept these IPs relevant for so many decades. Please continue the stories, expand the universes, give new meaning to what came before. Take an old idea to build upon something new that we can look back and say, oh, that was clever. But if the last 4 decades of IP devotion will not be respected for the fans that found comfort from them, then Hollywood shouldn't expect fans to go quietly into the night without a fight. We are at the ready to spend several thousands of dollars, glowing online reviews, and our undying support to whatever IP and brand we love, and usher in the next generation of future fans with our own children. If the IP is made with respect we desire over the material being experimented on today with our love. Again, this doesn't mean dot every I or cross every T we call for, but fans do pay the bills. We will be there when we believe in our IPs again. I've spent 13 of my 22 Navy years stationed in Japan. My wife is Japanese, and our little ones are half. She loves hip-hop and dancey songs. When I'd ask her and others in Japan why they love these songs, well, it was because of the beats and the dance move. They didn't follow the lyrics, which is true to me when I'd go into a Japanese children's store playing Eminem quietly in the overheads. The love for pop was there. To me, this equals pop on big-ticket movies seen overseas. I've seen several big movies in Japan, Hong Kong, Kowloon, Singapore, Bahrain, the Philippines, Malaysia, South Korea, Thailand, and Cambodia. Often I'd get asked by the English-speaking locals what I thought of the movies. I went on about the stories mostly being either true to the source material or way off, but they'd always ask about the pop scenes or the visuals. I relived that even with the subtitles, and several times I'd only be laughing loudly when the humor was on, but I was the only one, that the importance was on those pop scenes, the action. The stories were secondary. The international market, from my experience, wasn't interested in source material or trueness to what came before, but how the visuals were. Same as hip-hop. Important was in the beats, not the lyrics. As movies seem to be made for scenes of pop storytelling, sadly, the storytelling has fallen off the importance ladder of the movie genre. that we, the geeks, the fans, plea for the importance of engulfing our minds and hearts. The MCU has walked a great tightrope line of true to the source material with great pop, making them modern gems, but also capturing our hearts. That's all I've got for now. What is your deeper dive thought about being surrounded by the town that makes movies? Will the stories we love become priority again? Or are we only going to be drummed down as haters or vicious fans for crying foul for the international markets taking precedence for the action and adventure of these pop scenes? Thank you, Chris. Well, it was a little difficult to read, Chris. I won't lie, but I understand what you're saying. And it's really interesting to hear from someone who's been in the service. By the way, congratulations on retiring, but thank you for everything that you've done for us. What an interesting life to have been able to be on Navy ships and literally travel the world. That would have been amazing. But here's the thing, even if you don't understand the language, I do think that stories come through. And despite the fact that there are great differences in our culture, Joseph Campbell certainly understood it. There are the hero's journey in every culture around the world. To be human is to have certain characteristics. And I think the idea, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, whether you're a parent or not, whether you're however you are, I think the idea of an individual wanting to be a hero and help his fellow human beings or her fellow human beings, whether it's in the neighborhood, whether it's in the country, wherever it is, whether it's on the planet, is universal. And I think that's bared out in a lot of foreign cinema. And I think you're right. I'd like to believe that, look, if I was Chinese and I only spoke Chinese and I didn't really speak very much English, if I was going to see a movie like The English Patient, probably wouldn't work for me. I might not understand all the subtle nuances of that story. I had enough English-speaking people laugh at me for saying it's one of my favorite movies. It's so boring, they'd say. God only knows what a Chinese audience would make of Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, or even worse, Stalker. I get that. But I think that a Fast and the Furious movie, you can get that. The Chinese audience can embrace that, whether they understand it or not. Or an East Indian audience, great film going culture there. A lot of movies get made. There's something to be said for making films that are visually able to travel across the planet. But I don't think everybody likes a good story. Now, of course, different cultures have different touchstones with which they understand how stories unfold. So there's a colloquialism to great storytelling, certainly, but there's also a universality to it all. And I think at the end of the day, it's the stories that matter, not necessarily what you're calling the pop of it all. The pop is, of course, easily understood, but people fall in love with movies because of the stories, not just the histrionics, not the explosions, but eventually stories will win out. They will win the day. I honestly believe that. I do. So I think that great storytelling is never going to go away. And even with pop storytelling, even with tons of craziness on screen, even then you can only take so much before you need a great story. Everybody wants a great story. Willow Yang says, "Greetings, my favorite creepy older dude." I believe that Aaron called me that on the on John Campy's show. It's really hard. It's very difficult. I will say this as a complete aside. It's very difficult to be getting older because when you're a lifelong genre fan, and I've been into Star Wars since I was like 10, and there's a new Star Wars movie coming out, and I'm still building Star Wars models and collecting Star Wars characters. that there's a certain element of my life that has not changed. And the idea that I'm getting older and the perception other people have of me, like as the creepy older dude, it's very strange to be thought of that way. And but it's interesting. I mean, it's every man has gone through that his entire life. I mean, there's been a lot of literature written, a lot of ink has been spilled about getting older and the mortality of life. But it's very interesting. The world that I've lived in has not, I mean, it hasn't changed. I've literally been living in the same sort of realm that I've been living in since I was a little kid, which is kind of odd in a way. It's kind of strange. And, you know, now that I'm older than I've ever been. Every day that goes by, I'm older than I've ever been. Each day I wake up and I'm like, yep, man, I'm older today than I've ever been. And it's a little strange because all of my interests and indeed the world that I inhabit, people are aging out. They're aging out of the world. But here I am talking to you. So, well, Willow, I want to thank you for calling me your favorite creepy older dude. Here's the thing. I have no problem being older. I don't ever want to be considered creepy, though. You know, I'd hope I hope I'm not. I know there are people that immediately look. There are people like I had friends when I was a kid. When I was 13 years old, some of my best friends were in their 30s, and I didn't consider them older. I considered them as people that just knew more than I did. They'd just been around more, and I wanted to get get all the knowledge they could give me. But now it's very funny that there is definitely a bias, at least in the genre community, that I don't remember being there. Because when I was younger, there was no younger people. When I was going to conventions in my teen years, I was the youngest person there, especially more at literary conventions. I mean, that has changed because of the internet. There's a lot more younger people getting involved in conventions from a younger age than there was when I was younger. But what's really interesting is when the younger people now go after me and go, oh, you're the creepy. They don't say creepy, but get out of here, grandpa, you know, get off my lawn or get off your lawn, whatever. I didn't, when I was younger, that didn't exist. And it's interesting that it exists now. And it, you know, it doesn't really bother me because that's just the way it is. There's nothing I can do. But it's funny that has happened because when I was a kid, there was nobody my age who was into this stuff. So everybody who was older. And now I'm the old dude, which is so weird because I'm the one still talking about action figures and model kits and toys. And it's a very interesting, it's an interesting world now, but I love it. Willow then goes on to ask who would win in a fight between Buffy Summers or River Tam. Wow. Well, I'd have to ask, does River Tam have access to the technology that she can have access to? Or is it going to be a bare knuckle brawl? Because I would say weapons free, no technology. I think Buffy Summers could beat River Tam. But if there were weapons involved and technology, probably not. But you know what I think? I think that somehow River Tam and Buffy Summers might be pitted against one another, but the fight would soon end and they would realize they're not at cross purposes and they would team up. As a matter of fact, call IDW. Where's the River Tam Buffy Summers team up comic? That's what I want to see. Jordy54 says, I watched Blaze of Glory on Deep Space Nine. I cried, I'll admit. Yeah, I know, right? How can you not? How can you not? Echo Base Network is here. Echo Base said, just got here. I thought the Tolkien estate would not let Amazon do anything that was not canon the way Tolkien created it. They won't. And as Stubble McShave pointed out, there were no wizards in Middle-earth during the Second Age. The Astari not got there, I don't know. But if that's the case, then there you go. Question has been answered. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, we shall see. I mean, I thought Lord of the Rings had some pretty great female characters in it. I really did. So, I mean, look, the characters were who they were. I mean, Tolkien was who he was, and he did write the stories that he was writing. So I think that why not be thankful, and why not honor what he wrote rather than be so worried about, well, let's gender swap these characters. Terry Cooper just sent in support to the channel. Well, thank you for that, Terry. I very much appreciate that. Very nice of you. Let's see, what do I got? I got more letters. And here's I really like this letter too. Razman's Reality here. Josh, who's written me before. Razakis, Josh, who is Razman's Reality, writes in, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story with me today about your friend from college. For those of you who don't know, I did spend a quarter at the Evergreen State College, and I had a roommate who suffered from cerebral palsy, and we became friends, and it was severe. And I watched, I mean, his body had betrayed him, but his mind had not. And I saw the way that he was treated. I developed respect for him because I was working in the computer lab at night, putting together a literary magazine. It took him 10 times longer to do what I was doing than it took me. And I would just talk to him on campus. And when he lost his roommate and wanted another roommate, the housing office at Evergreen called me and asked me if I would be his roommate. So I was for a quarter, and it was very eye-opening. What was really particularly horrifying for me was when we'd go to like the mall, the local, this is at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, before I transferred to USC. The people treated him horribly because, he couldn't speak like a normal person, and his illness caused his body to be sort of pulled in different directions, and he didn't look normal, and no one knew anything about it. They just made fun of him from afar, and it was appalling to me. And you really, until you see what goes on, it was unbelievable. And I thought he was incredibly courageous, and he busted his ass, and it didn't let him stop. He was not stopped by any of that. But it bothered me seeing how people, the unbelievably cruel ways people can heap, cruelty on somebody they know nothing about. Somebody that clearly just doesn't look like they do or does not fit the norms. I mean, it's there, and it's true, and it happens every single day. And Brian was very aware of it. And it was not cool. Anyway, let me continue on. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me today about your friend from college. It really meant a lot to me because it's very true. Unless you go through it, you never understand it. Just for context, here is a copy of the email that I sent to a few people in YouTube's technology space. You don't have to read this out on the show. I just wanted to show that I was clearly not asking anyone for anything in an unreasonable way, and that's why the lack of any kind of response at all was disheartening. Thanks for all you do. I'm going to read this because I think it's important. My name is Josh, and my username is Razman's Reality. I've been a subscriber for a long time. I have cerebral palsy. I've been a YouTuber on and off for about 10 years. I took a break from it because of various life issues, but I watch wonderful, creative people like yourself, and I really want to try and do things for real this time. My problem is that living the way I have to right now, I feel like it is keeping me from succeeding. I haven't ever really had the equipment I need to succeed. I have horrible lighting with just 2 lamps, just a regular webcam that doesn't look good no matter how much I fiddle with the OBS, and a computer that's very slow. It takes me about 7 hours to put out a decent video. What I was wondering is, as a tech YouTuber with a fortune of having relationships with companies, if you yourself would be able to reach out and maybe guide me to who to reach out to about the possibility of having help to build a YouTuber or video sponsorship. Normally, I despise the idea of just being given things because of my condition, but it's just where I am right now in life. Without financial help for equipment and guidance on how to do better lighting without having to rewire my room for overhead lights, I can just see a way to do this I just can't see a way to do this that's right, and it's something I really want. Not just for my own creative sanity, but to inspire people and show them that anyone can do anything in life if they push themselves to do it. Thank you so much for your time today in reading this and for all that you do. Now, I know you sent this to different, technologists. It's tough. Look, I'm not going to lie. getting any kind of sponsorship, anybody who's doing YouTube channels. I mean, I learned basically from John Campion buying equipment. Like, you know, I have a light on me right now that is it's an LED light, and you can change the temperature. It wasn't that much, but you know, you have to have an LED light. Elizabeth bought me this microphone for Christmas last year, which is dusty. I should dust it. And that's where I got that. And it's tough. It's hard. And I've been building the set, you know, that I'm going to go on, and I've got all this equipment here, and I've been acquiring it all. And you go out and you want to, it's expensive. I mean, to be on YouTube, it's to do it right. And I'm still in a way a ramshackle. I mean, look at me. I want to be on a set with lighting. I'm a filmmaker. I mean, look at this. I got all kinds of strip LEDs. Wait till you see it. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. But you know, I'm using a camera that's in my iMac Pro right now. But I have external cameras that I'm going to set up. I have 4 of them actually, and I'll be switching between camera angles. But it's tough. But I wanted to read that because, look, I know it's rough. I don't know if anyone's going to reach out to you, Josh, but you never know. And I do understand. I mean, I wish I could do something for you right now, but being the life of an independent filmmaker and all that, you know, John actually, Campia gave me one of his cameras, which I've been playing with and using because he's constantly upgrading. But, you know, I figured I'd read that letter because you just never know. I think it's important. This is a funny letter. I got to read this because this is a follow-up to, it's about a bad movie theater experience, which is always good to read. Always good to read things about that. But, wow, somebody sent in messages were deleted, but thanks for, oh my God. Terry Cooper says that Threads aired 35 years ago today. I have the Blu-ray. I guess because you're sending me a super chat in pounds, I can only assume you're in the UK. Okay. If you guys, so everyone knows in America, well, if you were alive in the 80s, Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek II and Time After Time, directed a movie called The Day After. That was a movie about a nuclear attack on an American city in Kansas. And it was aired on TV. It was a huge deal because it was an accurate, well, I guess as accurate as it could be, representation of what a nuclear attack on an American city would look like. And it was rough. It was rough. And there was all kinds of, I wrote an editorial about it in my high school newspaper. Parents they're outraged. Kids shouldn't be seeing this. Well, The Day After was fine. But that movie had nothing on Threads. Now, if you guys haven't seen Threads, would you be surprised to know that I have a beautiful Blu-ray that was released last year of Threads? Threads was basically the British answer to The Day After. And I want to say it was set in Sheffield, England. But basically, it's about the outbreak of nuclear war. And it shows it from the British perspective. And unlike The Day After, which was very much like a Hollywood movie, Threads is basically a docudrama. And it is harrowing. I mean, it is harrowing. And unlike The Day After, Threads deals with the long-term effects, and you actually see the long-term effects of what the aftermath of a nuclear war would be like. And let me tell you, there are a few movies that have the kind of ending that Threads has. It defines, when you look up downbeat in the dictionary, there's a picture of the end of Threads. I loved it. You know, Threads is punk rock, man. It is so, you watch it now, it's like, yeesh. But it's great. And you can get it on Blu-ray. They did a great restoration of it. I did not know it aired 35 years ago today. That is crazy. And Terry Cooper has the Blu-ray. I got it. It's great Blu-ray, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. Echo Base Network says, thoughts on the rumor of a sequel to The Last Starfighter? Do you think it will actually happen? Look, at this point in time, Hollywood, here's the funny thing. In their idea to mitigate risk, well, let's go remake The Last Starfighter. How many people have seen The Last Starfighter today? I know Norman Lau has. I mean, if Norman Lau is watching this, he's screaming and yelling right now. But the Last Starfighter it was what, 84? Great movie. You know, one of the very first examples after Tron of using extensive CG in a film. Computer, all the space stuff, Zur and the Kodan Armada, all of that. What is it? The Gunstar. It was the Gunstar was the name of the ships in Last Starfighter. Look, if they made a sequel to Last Starfighter, I think it'd be great, especially with video games. I mean, how you know, it's, for those of you who don't know, The Last Starfighter was basically about a kid who lived in a trailer park. You know, he had a girl he really liked, and he was obsessed with playing a video game, a stand-up video game. You know, you put quarters in, called The Last Starfighter, and it turns out people who were really great at the video game, it was actually the video game, if you were good at it, this alien race knew that you could pilot their starfighters against the evil Zur and the Kodan Armada. and one of these kids is taken and ends up embroiled in an intergalactic conflict. And it's wish fulfillment for everybody who saw the movie and ever picked up a video game controller, because don't you want to believe that you too can save the galaxy? What do I think of? I think anything can happen now. Anything can happen. I mean, heck, they made a prequel to John Carpenter's The Thing that came out in 1982. So why not? Will it be good? I don't know. I think the story is pretty much irresistible. You can't go wrong with The Last Starfighter. At least I don't think you can. But I would love to see it. I who doesn't love The Last Starfighter? I think The Last Starfighter is pretty great. And speaking of Cinema Survey, Troy Williams sent me a letter. Troy Williams, referring back to, of course, the idea of should people talking in movies, horrible movie theater experiences. This comes from Troy Williams from cinemasurvey.net. Hello, Master of Fun and Wonder. Given the recent letters you've been receiving about the topic of bad movie audience experiences, I thought I would share a negative experience I had last night seeing Rambo: Last Blood. There was a guy behind me who kept talking throughout the entire movie. He wasn't just talking, though. He seemed to think he was performing in a comedy show. He would make jokes throughout the entire movie to the person next to him, but he didn't do much to lower his voice. It was getting a little irritating. At the same time, however, most of the rest of the audience was pretty fun. We would cheer and appropriately react when something exciting would happen. I really enjoyed this part of the experience, but then came the end of the movie, and there would be an intense scene, and there were guys in the theater who started laughing. I'm not just talking about the type of laughter you get when some crazy kill happens, or you laugh out of surprise and enjoyment. It is, after all, a Rambo movie. This guy was full on laughing at things that there would be no reason to logically laugh at. Then I assumed because laughter is infectious, two other guys started to laugh. Then the comedian behind me started saying, "Rambo, Rambo, Rambo, Rambo," in the voice of a small child. This was all during the final scenes of the movie. To say I was frustrated would be an understatement. Luckily, it did not affect the way I saw the movie, and I still had a great time. I just wish that Rambo would have jumped out of the screen and taken care of those bozos in the theater. Thanks for listening to my rant. Troy Williams, cinemasurvey.net. Well, you know, I mean, you can't really say anything anymore to people. I mean, you can't pull my thing unless you can pull it off. And I love to turn around and give him the best Clint Eastwood. If you don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to slit your throat open. You can't do that. Sometimes you can. All you can do is take solace in the fact that dudes like that will never be able to bring a woman to a shattering climax with their tongue. I'm telling you. That's all I can say. And it's true. That's a true story. And take solace in that, because that's the kind of guys they are. Let's see. I got other letters. I've got, and by the way, I have to keep now bringing up oral sex because somebody said they could make it a drinking game. By the way, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. And the ladies know. The ladies know. They can tell. This is interesting. This comes from Garth. Just Garth. With all the disappointments coming from The Last Jedi and Force Awakenings, why not let George Lucas return to direct The Rise of Skywalker? He's the creator of the Star Wars franchise. Would like to hear your comments. P.S. I enjoy your show, and your knowledge in cinema and its inner workings is impressive. It takes one to be in the industry to truly appreciate the finer things of cinema. Keep up the good work. Well, Garth, thank you. You know, I don't think George Lucas would ever come back. He's talked a lot about it was kind of a thankless job after the drubbing he took with the prequel trilogy. I just don't know. I just don't know if he would do that. I don't know. But, you know, again, hope springs eternal. Maybe JJ will third time's a charm. Maybe the final movie in the Skywalker saga will end up being good. But I think, you know, if George Lucas wanted to do it, he would have. But I think he's just like, I get it. Why would anyone want to direct a Star Wars movie now? I think The Mandalorian is going to change all that. I really do. We shall see. But who knows? But I don't know. I just don't know if I don't know if he'd want to. I don't know if he'd want to. So yeah. I really like, this is a nice letter. I'm going to read this. Of course, it's another letter about Aaron Eisenberg from Deep Space Nine, who passed away. This is from Liam Kerrigan, another man in Japan. Man, I want to go to Japan. My whole life I've wanted to go to Japan, if for no other reason than I want to go somewhere and be able to buy that 1/60th scale new Gundam that's coming out in December, the new Gundam from Char's Counterattack that I really want, that's sold out everywhere. You can't pre-order. It's like $900. It's $1,000 if you get the extra pieces. I need to get to Japan, I got to tell you. But anyway, this is from Liam Kerrigan. Greetings once again from Japan. I know you normally like to focus on the positives in genre entertainment on your show, but I'm afraid I'm writing today in response to some very sad news. Today, I heard we lost Aaron Eisenberg, Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Voyager actor, wonderful ambassador for Star Trek, and all-around good guy. Of course, despite all the work he did and all the joy he brought to so many in the 50 years he spent on Earth, I think we all remember him best for his role as Nog, the little Ferengi that could. Having a younger character that children could relate to was something that had already been tried in season 1 and 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation with mixed results. However, on Deep Space Nine, Nog and Jake's friendship and Nog's growth from Ferengi stereotype to pioneering war hero was character growth done right. I can't think of any other show where I've initially had such a dislike for a character and yet grown to love them so much by the series' conclusion. We were all there with Nog. We felt his anguish as he wrestled between Ferengi greed and Starfleet nobility, as he grew to love and appreciate the father he had previously dismissed as an idiot. We were all right there cheering for him when he finally started to emerge from his war-induced PTSD and cast aside his physical and mental crutches to walk unaided once again. None of these magical moments would have been possible without the magnificent acting of Aaron Eisenberg. So here's to you, Aaron, as you boldly go where all of us will go someday. Rest easy knowing that we will never forget you, and we will always treasure the joy of your performance and what it gave us. We also remember beyond the cameras that fine man who always had a smile for fans, who made my day when he responded to my tweets, and who was always so grateful just to be a part of the Star Trek legend. Godspeed, Aaron. As always, Rob, thank you for being there and lifting us all up when we've had a bad day. I think today more so than usual, it's especially appreciated. All the best, Liam Kerrigan. Well, Liam, having known Aaron a little bit, he would have loved this letter, and I couldn't have said it any better. So nicely done, sir. I really that was a great letter. Here is another letter about the movie-going experience, and one that I quite enjoyed. There's something happening. I hope my dog isn't destroying something. This is from Tim Salmons. Dear Rob, congratulations on cultivating a community of thoughtful, like-minded folks with steadfast opinions who have the courtesy to communicate them in meaningful and considerate ways. It's always great tuning in and listening to both you and your brethren speak on topics that, even if I'm not thoroughly versed in them, are still fascinating to learn more about. But I've thought about writing to you a number of times and may yet write again after this letter. But recently, one of your readers brought up the topic of the pros and cons of modern theater-going experiences. I could relate to his experiences as I've had several bad encounters over the course of my life as well, and wanted to tag up on this topic. I moved to San Antonio, Texas several years ago, and here we have a selection of 3 Alamo Drafthouse locations to choose from, with another one in the works. And I rarely, if ever, go to regular movie theaters anymore. The screenings are always top-notch, the wait staff is attentive and friendly, the food is incredible, and the atmosphere is ripe with a devotion to cinema. Now, I'm not kidding myself here. I know that many of the folks that go to the Draft House aren't on the same level of film geekdom as you, I, and many of your listeners are. Regardless, the crowd that a Draft House gathers is one of mostly respect. We've all come to see a movie and nothing else. As such, I've had very few bad experiences at these locations, and only one that I would consider truly awful, which I will get to in a bit. To further illustrate, the Alamo Drafthouse informs you before the movie starts, don't talk, text, or arrive late. Keep your cell phone dark, silent, and out of sight. After one warning, you will be ejected from the theater without a refund. Problem with a loud table? Raise an order card and a manager will take care of it. I've seen enough screenings at draft houses to have that committed to memory, obviously, but it gives you peace of mind to know that you're about to watch a film with a receptive and reverential audience. And if someone were to get out of hand, the staff would attend to it. I know I sound like a full-blown commercial, but I think it's important to emphasize just how important a theater chain like the Alamo Drafthouse is. We here, by the way, as an aside, we have one in Los Angeles that just opened, which I have not gone to yet, but I can't wait to go. Why more chains can't carry out these exact procedures and policies is beyond me. As your previous letter writer also pointed out, it would do nothing but improve their financial gains in the long run, as more people who want to go see movies for the theatrical experience would show up. They'd likely spend more money on concession stand items and perhaps see movies more than once. However, it would not likely fix everything. Even when it comes to my beloved Alamo Drafthouse, I'm not 100% safe from disrespectful behavior. One recent experience in particular affected my enjoyment of a film to quite a large degree, and believe it or not, it was at a draft house. I know I've just written several paragraphs about how great this place is, but this is a prime example of why many folks are staying home more these days, and how, even under the best of circumstances, people will be assholes or want to be assholes. The movie in question is Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which I saw on opening weekend at an early morning screening, as I'm apt to do. And Rob, as much as you didn't like The Force Awakens, I thoroughly enjoyed it, mainly because it was nice to see a coherent Star Wars movie with characters that I actually liked and a story that made sense, even if it was a blatant redo of the story from the original Star Wars. I was also fine with Rey being able to do things that her character probably wouldn't have been able to do, like flying the Millennium Falcon. So I adored The Force Awakens, so much so that I saw it 7 times at the theater. I have rarely, if ever, done that since I hit my 30s. For the record, the last movie I saw multiple times in the theater was 1998's Hannibal, just because of how addicted I was to audiences' reactions to that movie, which was a mix of laughter, horror, and disgust. But back to The Last Jedi. That reminds me I need to get the Hannibal 4K disc because I love Hannibal. The draft house, even at an early morning showing, was packed, which I fully expected. And I'm sitting in the theater with my girlfriend, highly anticipating this movie. But once it was underway, it was all downhill from there. Ooh, this is going to be bad, I can tell. Now, I'm not someone who went out of his way to hate on The Last Jedi upon its release or even afterwards. I kept my mouth shut on social media because not only was there enough of it out there, but I simply did not feel the need to add fuel to the fire. I will say that it was a disappointment, but I've learned to appreciate aspects of it later on. That said, the theater where I saw it initially was not the best theater to be in. One gentleman a couple of rows behind us, who might have been handicapped to a degree, I was never sure, was literally mouth breathing with an incredible volume. A few seats over from us, a lady kept talking to her boyfriend throughout the movie. A couple of seats ahead of us, at least 2 people were on their cell phones. More probably happened that I wasn't aware of, but needless to say, it was a disaster, and it completely affected my experience of seeing the movie. It was a perfect storm of bad experiences, and to some degree, it might have been slightly out of the staff's control. Because of this, I wasn't sure at first if my dislike of The Last Jedi was because of the content of the movie itself or because of the environment in which I saw it. I've often seen movies and not liked them at first, only to watch them later and appreciate them more. So to fully comprehend if this was truly a case of bad theatrical experience ruining a movie for me, I went, about a week later, to see The Last Jedi again, and I was slightly more entertained. I still didn't fully like it, but I wasn't angry, and I was more into the movie than I was the first time around. There were no open cell phones, there was no one talking, and there were no mouth breathers sucking up all of the air behind me. To be fair, he could have had a medical issue, and if that's the case, I apologize. Maybe he's the real Darth Vader. While I've never had an experience at a draft house like that before or since, it goes to show that even in an environment where the rules are more enforced, people will still continue to be disruptive. I could have informed the staff to do something about all of this, but since I was surrounded by so many good people doing these things, I didn't feel that it would have done any good. So many bad people. The most I could have done was leave, and I probably should have. If it had been one person responsible for all of this misery, I might have dealt with the situation myself. So I sympathize with all the theater goers who have a lack of choice, and I fully understand their hesitance to even want to go in the first place, especially since movie tickets and concession stand items are incredibly expensive these days, especially for families. In closing, I just want to reiterate your point, Rob. We're all responsible for our own behavior, and we need to keep that in mind when we interact with the public. Do unto others as they say. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the matter. Kindest regards, Tim Salmons. Tim, I'm with you, buddy. First of all, great letter. Thank you. Very nicely written. Appreciated your letter. I had an experience. So I went and saw Star Trek The Motion Picture last Wednesday night at a theater. Now, I've gone to a lot of revival screenings. Living in LA, there's almost every day. You can go see a classic film, whether you go to the American Cinematheque, to the Egyptian in Hollywood, or you go to the Aero Theater in Santa Monica, or the Vista, or you go to the New Beverly. They're playing old movies that people have seen a million times a lot here. And we get a lot of great screenings. So there's a lot of opportunity to go see films that a lot of people have seen. Now, at these screenings, everyone's sort of in on the joke. We've all seen these movies a million times. Everybody laughs. Everybody knows what's up. But there's always somebody, and look, I don't mean to put people down, but I like the mouth breather aspect of it. There's always people that want to turn public events or public. They want to perform. You know, from what I've learned, and I've seen a lot of this in the genre community throughout my life. There are genre fans that want to show you publicly how much they know, and they're trying. And you know what? In my mind, I've come to realize that they're not. It doesn't come from a bad place. They're looking to be a part of a community, and the way they're being part of the community is by, in their minds, showing you how witty they are and how much they really understand what we're all about to experience together. And they mean well. But I would say this from my own experience, nobody is more annoying or I would much rather have some girl who could care less, who's yammering away to her friend or talking on her phone, than somebody from my own tribe who's trying to show how smart they are about what we're about to see and bro down with everyone in the theater with their vast knowledge of what's about to happen on screen. Even though if girls are yammering away, they're the people I might give the Clint Eastwood, "If you don't shut up, I'm about to slit your throat." I mean, you can't do that really now, but 10 or 20 years ago, you could. "Oh my God, what did you say?" "Just please be quiet, man." Um, it happened. I'll give you an example. So we're watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture, right? Paramount logo comes up. It's a DCP of the theatrical version. So when the Paramount logo comes up, it says a Gulf Plus Western Company. Now we've heard the overture. People are respectfully quiet. Star Trek: The Motion Picture and surprisingly, The Black Hole, which came out 2 weeks after, both have overtures on them. So Star Trek: The Motion Picture has an overture, and then the Paramount logo comes up, and it says a Gulf Plus Western Company. Well, Paramount has not been a Gulf Plus Western Company in 4 decades. Well, a guy behind me says, not anymore, when the Gulf Plus Western logo comes up. Now, that's true, and everyone knows that. And I understand what this person was trying to do. It was trying to develop an instant camaraderie with everybody. He's there. We're all Star Trek fans. But what that tips me off is that everybody, every time something happens, his knowledge, that person's knowledge, is going to be shared with the rest of the theater in an attempt to be part of a community and to try and include everybody. Well, nobody wants that. We've gone to this screening to sit respectfully and watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And there are times that doesn't mean people can't laugh. Damn it, Bones, I need you badly. Kirk sticks out his hand trying to get McCoy to shake it, and he does it twice. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, laughing with the film or responding to things, even though you've seen the movie 50,000 times, that's okay. But making those kind of comments, those are for me the worst. They're the worst. I hate that, because we all know that, and we get the joke, but don't. It interferes. Your desire to be part of a community and to try and show us all how much you know is interfering with everybody. And we all know what you're doing, because we've all been there. We've all done it at a certain time in our lives. We all have. It drives me crazy. And it was funny because somebody I was with turned around and asked that person to be quiet. I didn't know who that person was. And when it was over and the lights came up, I realized I did know who that person was. And they came up and said hello to me. I didn't say anything to them, but I was like, oh man. But it's always rough. To me, movies are sacred, and I will never understand why people go into a movie theater and they are paying attention to anything other than what's on the screen. I can't. I am completely immersed. I mean, I get mesmerized by film. Films are very hypnotic for me. I fall into like almost a trance state. I literally barely blink. I watch movies and my mind is open. I feel like I'm on a different plane of existence when I go see a film. I feel all of my senses are engaged. I'm acutely aware of the surround channels, like how the sound is being mixed. I mean, I'm not sitting there, they're putting this surround. This is a very robust surround track on this film. I'm not thinking that way. I'm just very aware of being enveloped by the experience. I hate people who talk in movies, who their cell phones light up. I hate it so much because, again, I mean, I joke, but what do those people really have to offer their partners? Because if they can't keep their mind on a motion picture that they've paid to go see, right? How can they keep their mind on perhaps physically pleasuring you in some certain way? They'll be totally distracted. They're never going to be that good at it. If they can't pay attention during a movie, they can't pay attention to anything else in their lives. And that bothers me. It bothers me to know. I feel bad for those people. I feel bad when people are talking in movies. I'm like, oh man, they are never going to live a life that makes them truly happy, because their minds are, like what Yoda said, never his mind on where he is, what he was doing. It's a bummer. That's how I think, though. I don't know what that says about me, but it's true. Yeah. So there you go. There, Rob Burnett's thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. People who talk in movies are just never going to be great sexual partners. So why bother? Watch. People are going to come after me for that. Ray Valero says, just supporting, Rob. Great show. Well, Ray, thank you for the support. I really appreciate that. Glad to have you here. Hassan Chavez, a nice old school member of this Post-Geek Singularity community, says, don't go to the movies. Oh, wait. I don't go to the movies because most screenings are dubbed. Now, Hassan, if memory serves, you're in Mexico. Is that true? I didn't know that. I did not know that most screenings are dubbed. That would drive me berserk. As I've talked about, there are some I can't watch dubbed movies unless it's a movie like, I much prefer the English language track of Fantastic Planet, where Barry Bostwick, he of Megaforce and Rocky Horror Picture fame, is the main voice in Fantastic Planet. And the only other movie that I love watching dubbed, not to say I don't like the originals, but the dub track for Shogun Assassin is one of the greatest things of all time. Sandra Bernhard, the producer's kid, who they elicited the greatest voiceover performance from a child actor in the history of humanity, even though he's not really a child actor. I can't stand watching dub movies. I can't do it. It shatters the verisimilitude. I can't do it. I mean, look, do I like reading subtitled movies? No, because you can't concentrate on the visuals. You have to concentrate more on the subtitles. But that's interesting. Now I can understand why you don't go. But that's a good reason to not go to the movies. It's a bummer, but yeah. But I can understand why. I can understand why. Let's see. Should I read one more letter? I like that letter from Tim. That was good. Let's see. This is a good. You know what? I'm going to end with this letter because this is a good letter. No, maybe I won't end with this letter. No. You know what? I'm going to read this anyway because it's topical. It's a topical letter. This comes from our man Franz M. Franz M. I like Franz M's letter. Franz Moorhart's letter. Franz is here. And I like this letter a lot. So I think this might be the last letter. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe I'll keep going. Franz says, as of late, mainstream media reviews have become a laughing stock of film critiques, often going against the grain to whine about whatever problematic content its easily offended millennial church moms find to be a bad influence to the public they look down on. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that even though the general consensus among competent film critics is that Rambo Last Blood is a superior sequel that showcases bloody action scenes and a solid return for good old Stallone, critic reviews could accurately be called repugnant pieces of liberal claptrap. Rotten Tomatoes has summarized Rambo Last Blood thusly. Like the sequels that preceded it, Rambo Last Blood is content to indulge in bloody violence at the expense of its main character's once poignant story. How nice of the critics to promote Stallone's movie for him. So basically, the reviews are in for Rambo Last Blood, and critics are unanimously appalled by the gratuitous violence and offended by the negative stereotypes, and I can't think of a more rousing endorsement than the PC police hating it. Bring on the oh-so-accurate depictions of Mexican crime bosses and sex slaves meeting inaccurate but righteous 1980s action film levels of violence. We're talking about John fucking Rambo here. What else do critics expect? These pungent pieces of liberal claptrap may be required reading if you are a middle class and proudly wear a Che Guevara t-shirt, but to everyone else not insane, Rambo The Last Blood should be a cinematic blast. By all accounts, John Rambo is still the people's action hero, too busy having the balls to worry about shaving them. Hey, man, once again, since we're talking about, let's get back to oral sex, I found that in my life, a shaved scrotum is always a nicely received thing. But I understand what you are saying, Franz. Maybe I should just do a whole show on oral sex. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But here's the thing. It's been very interesting reading. The Rambo series is an interesting series of films. For those of you who don't know, it began based on David Morrell's original novel, First Blood. And if memory serves, John Rambo dies in the book. It was changed for the movie. I think the first film is a terrific movie. In the early 80s, when First Blood came out, America cinema goers were used to seeing movies about Vietnam. The Vietnam War loomed large at the cinemas. We had movies such as serious films like Coming Home or The Deer Hunter, and of course, Apocalypse Now. There was a lot of exploitation films. One of my favorite, as I've talked about a lot, James Glickenhaus's The Exterminator, starring Robert Ginty and Steve James, where Robert Ginty's character is a Vietnam vet, and it opens with an unbelievably graphic scene of a beheading in Vietnam. Pretty impressive for a low budget. It was a very impressive Vietnam sequence for a low budget indie film, and there was a lot of Vietnam themed material on many different levels in American cinema in the late 70s and early 80s. And Rambo was one of those. John Rambo was a Vietnam vet. He was mistaken as he's traveling through the Pacific Northwest for being a vagrant, a homeless person. And of course, the righteous Brian Dennehy, the sheriff of the town, and his deputies, including David Caruso, wanted to run his ass out of town because they perceived him to be basically human garbage. And of course, they pick on the wrong man, and John Rambo escapes and flees into the woods, and the cops are coming after him, and they are ill-equipped to experience what John Rambo is about to dish out. And he's basically a man that was wronged, and it's a great action movie. And then, of course, James Cameron co-wrote, I think it was 1985, right? 1985, maybe. Yeah, 85's Rambo First Blood Part 2, where Rambo gets to go back to Vietnam and rescue some POWs. There's another movie called Uncommon Valor from Paramount that had the same plot. So John Rambo, that character, definitely, even though is a literary character, both First Blood and of course Rambo it's exploitation cinema. And now, because we have what critics are doing is they're conflating what's going on our southern border with immigration and what's happening. A lot of people coming to America. Look, Mexican drug lords, Mexican drug cartels, it's not like they haven't been around, whether it's Mexican, Central American, the drug cartels have been around for a long time. And I think that, Rambo, they have him retired. He's living on the farm. He's old. And it's not a stretch to deal with human trafficking and Mexican drug cartels. Mexican drug cartels are scary. Just watch Ridley Scott's The Counselor. They cut off Penelope Cruz's head. Spoiler alert. They threw a body in a dumping ground. I mean, they're good villains. Mexican drug cartels, they make for good villainous people because they're ruthless and they do bad things, as evidenced by what happens in Mexico. Now, does that mean that all Mexicans are bad? No. Just like we've got drug cartels here in America. We have lots of bad people here. Does that mean that all Americans are bad? No. And I think, we live in a time where you want to, there's a lot of conflating going on. So Franz, I understand where you are coming from. But yes, Rambo was born out of the 80s action star. I mean, let's face it. Can you imagine if they made Rambo 3 today, where basically the Taliban are the good guys, the Mujahideen, all that? I mean, we teamed up with them against the Russians. And things change, times change. But you're right. I mean, what's interesting to me is the critical analysis. Really, when you're politically correct, your desire to be politically correct and be woke interferes with your ability to actually review a film franchise. You're in trouble. Like you can't review the Rambo films in a vacuum. It's not like the last Rambo movie was some paragon of woke virtue. So yeah, I found it interesting. And audiences, I have not seen Rambo. I think I might go see it tonight. I don't know. I want to see it. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of the Rambo movies for what they are. I mean, it's exploitation cinema. It's B movies that's elevated. I mean, First Blood was a very elegant movie, but it was still a B movie. Rambo First Blood Part 2 doesn't even hide the fact that it's a B movie. I mean, Rambo goes and gets to kill a lot of communists and rescue Americans. I mean, what's not to love? And you got Colonel Troutman and evil military officers. I mean, it's the fact that this movie is basically a Western It's an exploitation Western with John Rambo. If you don't understand that that's what you're going in to see, and you're going to review it and talk about, oh, it's racist, you're not, it isn't racist. It really isn't. I mean, that's like going back and saying that, remember when Lethal Weapon 2 came out and the villains were the South Africans because of apartheid? You know, let's stereotype all of the white South Africans the way they speak Afrikaner. I mean, it's the same thing. You're going to go back and you go, well, that movie's racist against white South Africans. Well, really? You know, it's so silly. What people need to understand is the exploitation genre. But now I don't even know if you can make a good exploitation movie nowadays. Somebody would get offended. Somebody would get angry. You can't do that. Well, that's sad to me. Exploitation cinema is a cornerstone of my experience watching movies. And by the way, by God, if you haven't gone to watch James Glickenhaus movies, let me just recommend to you, you got to watch The Exterminator starring Robert Ginty. And if you don't, you could go and see one of his later movies like McBain with Christopher Walken. You know, The Soldier, which recently came out from Kino Lorber. I thought Ken Wall is The Soldier. I mean, this is exploitation cinema. If you want to go American Ninja with Michael Dudikoff. I mean, if you haven't watched your exploitation cinema, you do yourself a favor. Go watch some exploitation movies and don't get offended. Don't get offended. Go have fun. That's what they're for. They're cathartic. But yes, Franz, I agree with you. I mean, it's so weird that a movie like Rambo is going to be like, hey, let's talk about our feelings and let's make it about, you can't tell these stories. I hate that. Exploitation movies are important. You know, it's like, well, it's tough. Hey, look who is here. Victory Unlimited Show is here, ladies and gentlemen. Victory Unlimited Show. I love when Victory Unlimited Show is here. And by the way, thank you. You always are very nice and very supportive of the channel. Victory Unlimited Show. Victory Unlimited says, Rob, are you at liberty to share with us how you plan on marketing Tango Shalom? FYI, I recently heard that it's more profitable to rent movie theaters and share screening profits with the owners. What are your thoughts? Well, that's a good question. How are we planning on marketing Tango Shalom? Well, here's what happens when you make a low budget independent movie, and Tango Shalom is truly an independent movie in every stretch, or in every any way you can think about independent films. Tango Shalom defines that. It truly is independent cinema. It's a movie that's taken, well, years to finish, shot on the streets in New York for low budget. And as the producers got more money, we were able to do more things. We're now finally finishing the film. Tango Shalom was shot a while ago. It defines indie cinema. How do we market the movie? Well, we really have to figure out, first of all, the movie doesn't have stars in it. Karina Smirnoff, who was on Dancing with the Stars for like 13 seasons, plays the main female protagonist. She's amazing, by the way. It's her screen debut in a film. She's amazing, but everybody else, there's some great character actors like Renee Taylor, who played Fran Drescher's mother in The Mommy. Of course, Lainey Kazan, that was in a million different movies, including My Big Fat Greek Wedding. In fact, my fellow producer on the film, Joel Zwick, directed My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So Joel Zwick and I are two of the producers on the movie. We're actually the two single card credited producers in the main titles. Because what? You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. But no, I mean, I've been instrumental in keeping this movie together and banging the drum. As a matter of fact, it exists. The very computer I'm talking to you on right now, it's all in here, baby. The entire movie right here. How do we plan on marketing the movie? That's when you're marketing a film, it really comes down to your distributor. And I think Tango Shalom is really a wonderful movie. And in a way, it's a faith-based movie. There's not a bad bone in the film's body, unfortunately. And I can say this as somebody who was raised as a Jew. I went to Sunday school. I was bar mitzvahed. I learned Hebrew. My family's foundation built a synagogue in Seattle. I can say this. The problem with it is it's about Jews, you know, and a lot of the world still hates Jews. And they're especially Hasidic Jews or Orthodox Jews, overt Jews, as I would call them. Now, one of the reasons that I really like Tango Shalom is it, without being preachy, there is a message of inclusion and religious tolerance in it. When I first started working on Tango Shalom, when I first started cutting it a couple of years back, I didn't see it as an overtly political movie at all. But during the Trump presidency and seeing what's happened in America, a movie that has a message, a nice message of religious tolerance and acceptance and inclusion, I think is a good one. I'll share a story with you guys about producing Tango Shalom and something that I personally contributed to the film that speaks to this. So in the movie, through the course of the plot, the Moshe Yehuda, our main protagonist, our character, who's a Hasidic rabbi and father of 5 and a happily married man. He teaches at a religious school and he's very devout. In the course of the film, he believes he's heard the word of God, and God has spoken to him and told him that he must learn to dance the tango. Why this is the case, we don't know. Of course, a Hasidic man who is also a rabbi, how's he going to learn the tango? His wife doesn't know the tango, and he can't touch another woman. Through the machinations of the plot, he ends up meeting Karina Smirnoff, who is a smoking hot dancer, Gentile dancer. And he doesn't know what to do because God has spoken to him in his dreams, and he must heed the word of God, but he also has to live up to the beliefs of his religion and his community, which is in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, around there, the Hasidic community there. And part of the movie was actually filmed at a place called 777, one of the largest Hasidic, I guess it's a temple. I've never been there. It's a temple in the United States. And it's actually filmed there within that community. And so in the course of the movie, he goes to consult other religious leaders. He goes sort of off the reservation, as it were. And he consults with a Catholic priest. He talks to a Sikh mystic. And he also talks to an imam. And in the course of the movie, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he demands to talk to this imam. And they just walk down the street in New York, and Moshe tells this Imam Ahmed, his problem and asks, how would you feel as a Muslim if you felt that Allah spoke to you and told you to dance the tango? Would you do it? And the imam basically says, no, like it would be an evil inclination. I would not do that. And they have a nice moment. Well, at the end of the movie, through various things, the other religious leaders were at this thing that happens, but he wasn't. The imam wasn't. And instead, the imam sort of sends a letter, and one of the other characters reads the letter. And it always bothered me. It always bothered me because I understand that in reality, the imam probably wouldn't, because of his own religious beliefs, wouldn't show up to this particular thing that's happening. But it bothered me that these other religious leaders were there. And I felt that it's the imam's presence, especially because the scene with Moshe, a Jew, and an imam, a Muslim, walking down the street in New York City, was sort of, in my mind, the crux of the movie, showing that, two men from different religious belief systems that have always sort of been pitted against each other, especially in the modern age, could be seen respectfully talking with one another about philosophy, and that it worked. There was mutual respect. I didn't like the fact that our imam character was not seen at the end of the movie. So this bothered me for a long time. Now that, since I'm producing this movie and I'm editing this movie, I have a great relationship with the director. And I said to Gabe, Gabe, what if we shot a new scene? And the new scene that we shot was this imam character. So when the letter is being read by one character, we cut to a flashback of the imam writing the letter. So you see the imam writing the letter, and we hear the imam's voice, like his own voice, in his own words, reciting this letter as he's writing it. And we could see him. So we could intercut. So the main character, this other character that's not Moshe, is reading this letter, and then we cut to the imam. So we see him intercut with these other characters. And Gabe's like, we got to do that. I mean, I couldn't make this call, but the director said, That's amazing. We got to do it. I said, okay. So in New York, Gabe went back to New York and we had the shoot. They had a shoot. They did a shoot. I wasn't there, but I said what I thought we needed. I'm like, here's how it goes. And they got the actor back, found a great location, and shot the scene. And then I took it in and I cut it in. And then at first, we just have this other character reading. And I put that together and I said, Gabe, you know what? We need to have the imam's voice. So we'll have one character will start reading. And then, movie convention, it'll start the other character, the imam, will then hear his voice. Then we intercut it all. It worked great. And this is how movies get made. This is why there are reshoots, even on big movies like Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Because when you put films together, this idea that you're going to capture all the magic in a bottle that you need when you're making films, it doesn't always happen. And it's not until you put, I would not necessarily have thought, if I was just reading the script, this would not have struck me until I'd lived with this movie for a long time. And I knew every frame of footage. I'd put it all together. And I don't like to stop working on movies until nothing bothers me anymore. I'm always going to know. And when I say nothing, I mean, there are production problems when you make films that are never surmountable because of the way it was shot and you didn't have enough money. There's always things you want to change. Those I put aside. But if there's story issues or there's things that I think can be improved, character moments that could be added like this, I'm thinking practically as a producer and as a director, even though I didn't direct the movie, I'm like, you don't even need to take sound. We just need to go to a place. We have a great location where we shot this. It looks phenomenal. And we actually shot it in a Moroccan restaurant, to be honest. And when I say we, I mean the crew. I was not there, but it looks beautiful. And we see our character. And there's a moment there where you see him look up at the end, and he kind of smiles, and then you hear his voice. And it makes this little scene. Now, I'm talking to you like this is some big revelatory thing. No, the movie's it's a little indie film. But anyway, so marketing the film, because it doesn't have big stars in it, back to your original question, Victory Unlimited, I see you got me going off. The movie needs to be, I don't know if it'll ever be a theatrical hit. I mean, I think that the original producers who originally originated the project think it could be like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I don't know. Maybe it could, but it would be, I think it could be a little festival darling. It could probably win awards at festivals, an audience award or something, but it's very traditional. It's almost a throwback to a movie that came out in the 40s. It's a nice movie. Nobody even swears in it. So it's not exactly, let's just say anybody who can't wait to see Joker is not going to be lining up to go see Tango Shalom. My hope is that it would be picked up by a streaming service. I think if you like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Tango Shalom is also the kind of movie that you would love. Not just because of the Jewish content, but because of the kind of movie that it is. And so marketing the film, maybe you could rent movie. When you rent movie theaters, it's called four-walling a movie. So that's you yourself four-wall a film. Now, that happened a lot in the days of yore. You'd literally have a film print in your car and you drive around the country and four-wall it at drive-ins or theaters. I mean, you can't really four-wall something at a drive-in because there's not four walls, but you pay for theaters yourself. The problem is, like with all movies, and part of the reason movies are so expensive, nobody knows the movie's there. The only way you're going to make any money, even if you four-wall a film and put it in a theater, is if you market the film. And one of the reasons why, if you want to go support the Post-Geek Singularity and you want to support the Burnettwork on our website, I'll flat out tell you the reason. Because I'm trying to compile an email list for people. So if, in fact, Tango Shalom is available suddenly on a streaming service, or if it's video on demand, I can write to everybody who's a subscriber on the channel and promote it. You might receive an email from me saying, "Hey, thank you for supporting the Post-Geek Singularity." That's why people ask, "Well, why do you have people giving you $1, on your website, promote?" Because what that does is in the future, it's going to allow me, for instance, when the Space Rob video game is done, flat out admit it. I'm going to send emails to everybody who support the channel and go, hey, you know, and I won't do that very much. I'm not going to be like, buy t-shirts. You know, I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do it when it's worth anyone's while, because I think that anybody who's supporting my channel, anyone who's giving me super chats, anybody who goes to the website, theburnettwork.net, also wants to hear from the work that I've actually been doing. So the if I had Tango Shalom to promote, I don't think any of you would feel bad if I sent you an email going, hey, a movie that I produced and edited is coming out at this point in time. By the way, if it is, write me and tell me, Rob, I don't want to know. You know, because I don't want to be that way. But that's the whole point, is that nowadays it's not so much making anything, it's how do you get eyeballs on what you've made. And luckily, look, my movie Free Enterprise is basically a lost, forgotten film. The version on Amazon that's in 4:3 is not my preferred version of the movie. It's a geek movie. It was considered at the time, well, a lot of people thought it was a new geek classic. It's a combination of Chasing Amy and Swingers, you know, and it's fallen by the wayside. I would love to get it back out, although I think a lot of people would yell and scream at me about it. But it, you know, when Free Enterprise came out, we didn't have the internet the way we have it today to promote. So that's what we would do. And even if you four-wall a movie and get it into theaters, technically you're not wrong about that. The problem is then you have to get people to come see your movie. And that's the key. How do you do that? How do you get people to come see an indie Jewish spiritual quest family dance comedy fable? I think, who wouldn't want to see that? You know, when has there ever been a indie Jewish spiritual quest family dance comedy fable? There is a genre that I think there's a future for. You know, you've seen Endgame, now come see Tango Shalom. And the current tagline for the movie is, the ad line that we came up with is, nobody wants Rabbi Moshe Yehuda to dance the tango except the Almighty. And another tagline that I came up with was, Rabbi Moshe Yehuda is about to discover divine intervention can be rather unorthodox. I thought that was pretty good. And since you asked about marketing, what's really interesting is I have a painting. It was done by a Russian artist, almost for fun. I have a painting. I'll show. As a matter of fact, no one's seen this painting, I don't think. This could be a debut. So this is what's called key art. I mean, obviously, this is very this key art is not traditional key art, but I like it because I like Polish movie posters and Czechoslovakian movie posters and movie posters from all over the world. This was done by a Russian artist, and I really like this painting, although a lot of people won't. But it's very, oh, here, look. I don't know how far back you can see, but here's this painting. And it was done by an artist named Yuri Kuznets. So he did that for us, and I think it's pretty cool. I'm going to make a poster, a Tango Shalom poster. It might be a Robservations special edition, and it'll have the title on it, and it'll have what's called a billing block with the names of everybody involved. But I'm going to make a one sheet, a movie poster out of that. Will that movie poster be what a theater, anybody who buys the movie will use? Probably not. I mean, this would be a stylized movie poster. I just like it. I like that a Russian artist wanted to do it and did it. And in a way, I've had this poster sitting next to me. I haven't put it up, but it's definitely been an inspiration. I had it digitally scanned at a very, very high resolution. So there you go, kids. I don't really talk about Tango Shalom much, but hell, why shouldn't I? Because why not? Jordy54 says, look out for an Irish indie short called Luna's Ghosts. I love that title. I think that title is great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've listened to me prattle on. It's been, again, another wacky chat of all kinds. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank my moderating staff, Terry, the Sheriff of Nottingham, Detective Jim Boyers, all the way not here in L.A., who was actually a real police detective. I don't just call him one. He didn't just play one on TV. Of course, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden. And if you follow me on Instagram at RM Burnett, or you follow me on Twitter at Burnett RM. Mike Bodden, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden, has begun his re-election campaign to be re-elected as the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa. So I'm sure it's going to be a fiercely contested election. You just never know if there's going to be foreign interference or if foreign agents are going to usurp the voting process. Who knows what's going to happen? And then, of course, we have Greg Smith, who is my last moderator, who is, in fact, building a snowspeeder, a 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder from The Empire Strikes Back in his garage for the next Emerald City Comic-Con. So I want to thank the moderating staff. I want to thank everybody for supporting my channel. I want to thank all of you people for going to the Burnettwork.net website and supporting me there. It's a lot of fun. And I want to thank all of you for just being just a great bunch of folks. I think we've got a great community here. And as all of you know, I always say, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say, have a better day. I'll be back tomorrow. Be on the John Campea show too. So have a better day. Oh, and if you like these chats, please hit like. I'd very much appreciate it if you would hit like and subscribe if you can, because as Gary Beekler at Nerdrotic says, we smaller YouTubers, we're falling by the wayside when it comes to analytics, and it's always helpful. But thanks very much. Have a better day, and I will see you tomorrow.